Daishou's quivering grasp tightened on the strap of his bag. His eyebrows crinkled together, staring at the school building in front of him. The longer he stood in place, the more strange looks were thrown his way. He didn't blame the curious onlookers for questioning his presence. He would too if a stranger stood unmoving in front of his school gates. Oh, that's right, this was his new school. The more he repeated that phrase in his head, the worse it sounded. His lips thinned out, ready to step forward. "What are you doing here?" The familiar voice came from behind him, a voice he studied and tuned into on the volleyball court, so he could pick up his opponent's game plan and/or mentality. The voice made the pit of his stomach drop. Everything suddenly became real. He realized that this nightmare is reality. He drew his lips up into a mocking grin, and his eyes crinkled up at the end, showing his default expression. "I wonder." Flashback. Daishou stood motionless in front of his living room doorway. His eyes stared down blankly at the brown boxes, then back up towards his sister, who was pouring scorched bacon on a plate that he had to assume was his. "She's planning to kill me." That was the first thought that came to mind. It was the only thought that made sense to him at the moment. Why else would his bedroom clothes, school books, and trophies be packed up? The house was cleaned, and she even made food. Sherry Hebe was a person who barely came home, let alone do housework. "Good morning, brother." "Afternoon," he corrected, walking in to take his place at the table in front of the plate his sister prepared. He lightly glanced at it, then back towards his sister, who gave him a rare smile. His gaze shifted towards the burnt pan on the stove, then towards his sister's reddening hands. He took his spoon and started to eat without a complaint, expressionless. His sister's soft smile grew wider. Her hand found its way into his thoroughly prepared hair. That he'd take him at least an hour to brush and style alone. He is very panicky when it comes to someone touching his hair. Before he could push her hand away, she did it herself, whining in pain. She glanced to her brother to see if he noticed, but he continued to eat. She let out a sigh of relief sitting across from him. "Thank you," Daishou stated, finishing his food. He stood up, walking towards the sink to sit his plate in it. He bent down, opening the cabinet under the sink, and took out a first aid kit for burn wounds. He walked back towards his sister, who pouted and hesitantly giving him her hand. "I thought you didn't notice." He gave an unusually soft grin that was specially reserved for his family members. "How couldn't I?" he said in a false, sugar-coated mocking voice. "You treat me like a baby, but I'm going to college this month." His usual grin stretched across his face as he lightly pinched her palm, causing her to flinch. "We're family," he said. His voice became playful, using the same tone he uses at school. He speaks different ways in different settings. His sister's eyes lightly lingered on his face, falling into a trance. She parted her lips, closed them before reopening them again. "We're moving?" Her voice became soft as she peered up at him. Daishou's eyes stayed directed towards the bandages, focusing on finishing his task. He suddenly stopped moving before starting again, covering her uncovered skin. "To the Narama ward of Tokyo. Well, technically Miyagi." Daishou paused this time. He displayed visible emotions. What school?" he managed to say. "Nekoma High." He dropped the roll of bandages in pure shock despite already knowing the answer. Hearing it from his sister's lips was way different. "Fuck." Flashback ended. Daishou turned around towards Kenma, who narrowed his eyes. Daishou didn't have to be a genius to know what he was thinking. "Are you here to watch our game plan?" Daishou said, narrating the smaller boy's voice by imitating Kenma's soft voice. He then shrugged his shoulders, moving his hand to his hips, and lightly leaning backward to lift his head. "If that's your thoughts, I think you're unfit to be Nekoma 7. Since that means you're blind." Two-toned hair Chan, Daishou pose caused Kenma to immediately look him up and down, his pose giving Kenma a full view of his entire outfit. Nekoma school uniform. Kenma looked Daishou in the eye one good time before walking past him with a distraught expression. He started playing his game again. "If you planning on playing on our team, Kuroo might be the team captain. But after you get the yes from the coach, don't approach him. Approach Yako." Kenma suddenly paused. "He is about my size, short hair, and you saw him before?" Kenma then looked towards Daishou, glancing away from his game. We aren't snakes and we don't stoop down to filthy means, just to win. Daishou lightly sweat dropped, raising an eyebrow. Cannot just indirectly threaten him. If you attempt to do just that, you'd be a bench warmer. Nope, that's a direct threat. Kenma walked off. Something suddenly came to Daishu's mind. That's right. That's why I had a big problem coming here. Kuroo is here. He hates me. So yeah, I'm fucked. Daishou thought, his ears reddening at the thought of practicing with Nekoma Captain daily. Ring. Who's calling?
I'm chillin', real nigga feelin', rich kid asshole, paint me as a villain, still spittin' that cash flow, DJ Khaled.